I think what's interesting is that there's this inflection point that's created. And I really want to spend some time today talking about what allowed my life, right, to be able to transition from this slow growth of success to this explosive growth of success. And then also, why is it that my peers, the people that I grew up with in my neighborhood, were not able to access the same outcomes? And I think the most illuminating point here is that my expectations changed. I started to develop prodigious expectations. And if you contrast that with my peers, what you're going to find is that it wasn't that they had zero expectations or that they had no expectations. It's that they had low expectations and then they met them. But my expectations started to grow, and I would be what Norman Vincent Peale would say is a possibilitarian. I started to look beyond the plausible outcomes based upon my socioeconomic status and the people that were surrounding me, looking beyond the probable outcomes and being able to see what was possible. And a lot of people in my community could not do that. So how did prodigious expectations create this inflection point in my life? I think it'd be interesting to look at some science behind this. There's some really fascinating research done in psychology and behavioral economics, particularly by a guy by the name of Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist and economist, and he wrote a book called Think Fast, Think Slow. And Kahneman suggests that our brain uses two systems to make decisions. System one is fast, it's intuitive, it's quick, it's more subconscious. It's the part of the brain that's engaged when you hear a male voice say that I'm pregnant. And within 200 milliseconds, your brain has already determined that there's something wrong. And it seems automatic, but in reality, what's happened, your brain has made several calculations. It's conglomerated certain information about voice tonality and about biology. System two is slower. It's more deliberate. It's more conscious. It's the logical part of our brain that we engage when someone asks us to multiply 14 times 27. Or they say, give us the alphabet backwards from Z to A. And Kahneman suggests that we spend most of our lives making decisions in system one. And system one primarily operates under what's called associative memory. So there's these ideas that are laying around in your head, and then you hear certain things, and then your brain makes decisions based upon the association of different things going on in your mind. So here's an example. If I ask you what's 2 plus 2, many of you are going to say 4. Not because you calculated it, but because you associate 2 plus 2 with 4. That's your associative memory. Now, the fallacy in the associative memory is that it's prone to jump into conclusions because it ignores information that it doesn't have. It can create cause and effect relationships that do not exist. So it's prone to making mistakes. Here's a great example. So let's take someone from my neighborhood, grows up their entire life, and they hear that you cannot be successful if you're poor. That's just what they're taught. Then they go on in life and they give their very best effort in some project at school or their best effort in some sport or some job, and then they fail. And their brain is likely to infer that that's just par for the course for poor people. That's just the way that it is. But in reality, it was just a setback. It was just a learning opportunity. But because their system one was primed to believe that poor people can't succeed, it confirms the ideas that are laying around in their head. Then this vicious cycle begins, where people have these ideas that the cards are stacked against them and they can't succeed. And then their minds spend their entire life confirming those very thoughts that they have inside of their head. So I think if we want to understand the inflection point in my life, I think we have to understand what were the ideas that were laying around in my head and how was my system one shaped.